Hi, everyone. Today, me and Tete are going to be talking about some research that she's recently done about the origins of Superman. And this is actually an article she wrote last week on her website, which is linked in the description. And it's called Superman Mythos, Near Eastern slash Yiddish slash Hebraic comparison. And it was actually inspired by a recent stream we had on this podcast about Near Eastern mythology, which was, from a book that S.A. Negosian wrote, which I studied in university during first year, and I gave a copy to this book to Tete, and this really inspired her to look deeper into the Superman mythos because she has always considered the Superman mythos to be very mythological, kind of like a mythological figure for the modern age.
Exactly, exactly. If we consider it in the way our pop culture is and everything, is not Superman the first mythological figure of modern pop culture, and does he not embody many of the elements as well as the archetypes that embody, say, classical and ancient mythology?
Exactly. And I'm just going to scroll through your amazing blog post. And, she has covered a lot of things here, and we'll be touching upon all of these points. So, to begin, she talks about Mosaic Parallels, and then we move on to allegory for assimilation and politics and religion, conflicts with Golden Age canon and DCEU cinema, and then Near Eastern slash Sumerian slash Hebraic comparison across canons. We talk about his different powers in each of his canons, and we also have links for further reading. So, for you guys who want to read this in detail, check out the description. There's a link to Tete's website, and she will be writing more of these amazing essays in the next couple of weeks. And we also have a comment section. So for anyone who wants to join in our conversation, feel free to hop in.
You're more than welcome to join in, chime away, put in your contributions. I am by no means truly an expert, but I would consider myself, having been a fan since 5 years old, knowing quite a bit. I mean, I may not know the whole catalog of silver and modern canon, but I do know my golden age canon pretty well too.
Right. So can you start by talking about where you got the idea to write this essay in a bit more detail?
Well, the essay actually stemmed from our recent podcast, which we had talked about, with the we were sort of having a focusing on, Mesopotamian literature, the mythos and religion and literature and culture, of the Near East, which we think about, is the foundation for a lot of our, conventional cultural ideas and laws and, even the way we do commerce and things stem from this. And I was thinking, this permeates in so many aspects of society. And I was also too inspired by, I remember it was series of essays. Unfortunately, I didn't get to hear all of them at that point. But voice actor Crispin Freeman was talking about how with superheroes in pop culture, that these there were parallels to these along with the mythology and religion of antiquity, and I really loved how he touched upon that, and how these beings with powers and things like that had parallels to ancient myths. And unfortunately, like I said, I did not get to finish his essay series. um, I believe it may have been unavailable, or it could have been through a paywall. And at that time, which was some years ago, wasn't able to get past the paywall, unfortunately. But it was a very fascinating series that Mr. Freeman put together. Um, but I was thinking about that, and I thought, with my renewed interest and passion for Superman and all things Superman, um, I thought, there's so many parallels with Superman, Clark Kent, Kal-El, um, that mirror, that mirror so much of ancient myth, but also religion. There's so many uh, comparisons of, Hebraic and Yiddish ideas. And a lot of this makes perfect sense when you consider the fact that, um, his creators, were uh, you know, my brain, Siegel and Schuster were also, Yiddish as well. I believe they were from, I believe they were Litvak. I think they were both Lithuanian, if I'm correct.
Mhm.
Um, Lithuanian Jewish, who had settled in the Midwest in Ohio. Um, so whether or not they intended to, or whether or not they did, and didn't explicitly say, because to explicitly admit that was dangerous back then, they interwoven some very beautiful parallels and subtleties that really make Clark Kent slash Kal-El Superman slash Superman a very unique character, in the fact that he is indeed Jewish coded, he's Yiddish coded, and there's many things about him that are an allegory for, ancient Hebraic concepts and writing and religious events and stories and such.
Mhm. Yes, I've actually read about this, and it's great that you touched upon it because I think a lot of people don't realize this.
A lot of people don't. A lot of people don't. A lot of people would say, "Oh, Superman, you think he's like as American as apple pie or something," but that's not the case. Well, I mean, it is the case when you think about it, because it's not the way you think it is. It's so much different. And I think someone summed it up very nicely, that Superman is pretty much the story of an immigrant trying to assimilate while trying to make the new world he's living in a better place. And I think that's a beautiful concept. I think that's a beautiful, core concept that sometimes I think gets lost a lot, especially in Silver and Modern Age. It tends to get fuddled up with all the OP superpowers, and we tend to forget that originally Superman was just a very ordinary man with just really, really crazy powers. Like, crazy for that time. Like, he did not have all the powers of SilverAge, which came after Siegel and Schuster, but he did have some quite remarkable powers, and he was using it for good to combat social corruption and you know sort of defend the weak and vulnerable from the stronger bullies and such. And that was
Mhm.
the and basically sort of be an embodiment of the Tikkun Olam. And
Mhm.
you would probably pronounce that a lot better than I can.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, but to be that embodiment, and also a lot of social ideals as well. And that gets lost a lot. The problem is, I think, with Golden Age, maybe this did, it's a little too little for people, because there's not too much. There's lore, but it's not the lore people want, and it's more focused on the human side of things. And I think maybe that dissatisfied people, so people just added more and more to it, and we lost the focus of who Superman really is, and what he does and why he does it. Why does he choose to do these things? Because honestly, with powers like that, I mean, he could be, I don't know, a dictator or something.
Right, and that's why you liked Red Sun because it explored the darkness in a more mainstream way. Because most movies that talk about Superman don't really explore the dark side of him. It's mostly just talking about him as an OP, too good to be true kind of stereotype. The whole all
Exactly.
American well, not patriot, but someone who just stands for all the best ideals and he never questions anything.
Exactly, exactly. And then of course too, you've got the whole trend of making him very dark and things like that, and edgy and whatnot, like trying to give Batman a run for his money, which doesn't work either, because that doesn't fit with Clark's personality, or what he tries to embody or work through. That's not him. I mean, um Clark will always be somebody of hope, and that's why I always said, I think he's also an icon of hope punk as well.
Mhm. Right. So that makes sense. I think before he was a lot less overpowered because that was one of the problems he had with Silver Age, where, he just had a bunch of powers tacked onto him. So what were these powers tacked onto him in Silver Age that you didn't like?
Well, let's compare what he originally had in Golden Age. So, in Golden Age, starting from very first issue onward to whenever it had stopped, when when Siegel and Schuster no longer had the rights to to their own character, um, he did not originally fly. He did not fly until later issues, and that actually came because when Fleischer Studios began animating and adapting some of these stories, they said, "Well, it's very hard for us to show him leaping all the time. Would it be all right if we made him fly because that would use less frames for us to animate and would be easier on our budget?" So, thanks to Fleischer Studios, he gained the power of flight, which is why you see him in the Fleischer originals flying. But originally in Golden Age canon, he did not fly in the very first issues. He could leap, like he could leap over buildings. He could leap, like over tall buildings. He could leap very wide distances. So he's just kind of leaping. He wasn't really flying. It was a bit of gliding involved in it, but he wasn't just shooting up in the air and flying. Um, Also, very strong too. Yes, he could stop trains. Yes, he could lift a tractor or an airplane, or maybe realign a building a bit. Um, but there was a lot of struggle, and you do see this also too in Fleischer original animation. That when he does things, he does struggle. Sometimes he gets knocked out. Sometimes he gets knocked down, and sometimes he will struggle with things. He will get caught up in something, and he will struggle. Those fights will be hard. They will take the wind out of him, and he's just not knocking everything over like a feather. He's really putting all of his blood, sweat, and tears into what he's doing, and it's a bit of a strain. It costs him a bit, and he has to work really hard to achieve his accomplishments. um and sometimes he can't do things. Like, there was one point where he couldn't stop this meteor for coming, so what he had to do was try to fix this magnetic device some dumb scientist put together, and he kind of used his wits to kind of fix it and put it back together, logically how you put it back together, and used himself, because the cables were broken, use himself as sort of a connector with the electric currents, and just basically be like an extension cord, so that thing could get powered up and work. So not always this OP thing of him just being able just to swish it out of existence or take care of it. So the powers he did have in Golden Age. So early Golden Age, he could leap, strength. He did have X-ray vision, um, and wind control, which means he could kind of manipulate how he could. When leaping, you do kind of have to figure out how you're going with the wind. You just don't leap randomly. But then, also too, I guess it should be noted, the X-ray vision isn't always that great because he still has astigmatism, and he's still kind of nearsighted, farsighted, and there's an issue where he's trying to enlist in the army, and unfortunately he's thrown out because he's nearsighted and he can't do the eye exam. Um, but I'll get into that later with the essay. But basically, what Silver Age added was the heat ray stuff. Where his eyes turn red and he can just shoot things, which we kind of saw him, obliterate Stalin with that in Red Sun. So Silver Age gave us the heat ray vision. Silver Age gave us the Arctic, the freezing breath, which he can actually freeze something with his breath. He can just blow on something and freeze it into solid ice. Silver Age gave us that. Silver Age gave us the fact that he could fly into outer space and not need any kind of breathing apparatus, or that he could withstand the pressure, which makes kind of sense. I mean, he is a Kryptonian; they can handle that kind of pressure and stuff, so
Mhm.
they can go through space quite easily. Just like you and I probably take an evening walk, 8 p.m. down to the 7-Eleven, but
Mhm.
um, it gave us that. Silver Age gave us so much incredible strength that made no sense, that just seemed so illogical and overblown, way too OP. And also, Silver Age took away a lot of the good designs, including a very more natural, realistic body, a more hydrated body, less beefed up, less it looked less roided, so to speak. Um, and Silver Age gave us a lot of questionable designs. Silver Age also gave a lot of different characters and your sort of villain of the week sort of thing. Meanwhile, Golden Age, aside from Lex Luthor making an appearance now and then, and earlier, Lex Luthor really wasn't an established character. He was more of a random mad scientist doing dumb shit. Um, then, I guess was as it progressed, he became sort of a capitalist that was exploiting his scientific discoveries for gain. Um, but aside from that, Golden Age Superman didn't really have a set of villains per se. It was more just mostly about like corrupt politicians, gangsters, um, like factory problems, a lot of the social ailments plaguing the country at the time when Schuster and Siegel were writing this story. Um, so it was more of a social focus than anything else. And um, so Silver Age did give us a lot of the crazy OP stuff that I feel kind of detract from the effort and choices, the volunteerism, if you will, that Clark makes, because Golden Age really had to work to get things done. And sometimes he struggled, and sometimes it came at a great cost for him.
Mhm. That's true, and I think this is why people were actually kind of suspicious of, Superman because of the socialist implications, because there were no villains, it's not like, the whole villain of the week kind of thing like you see with, Dragon Ball Z or something like that.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, so basically, I would say I'm taking this from my essay here. So during the 30s and 40s, various publications, especially those featuring Jewish and crypto Jewish artists and writers as well, they faced accusations of communistic views. Unfortunately, Siegel and Schuster were not immune from this. Clark's pursuit of righting wrongs in a broken world without gain or reward embodied not only the Tikkun Olam of Judaism, but also a gentler version of first wave socialism to a degree. Faced with this, there came an emphasis on the American identity and wartime patriotism, and that sort of became the focus to lessen the pressure of the political whiplash. And of course, the social message that they embody in it, they show, they don't tell. That was a nice thing about Golden Age. You had a lot of showing but not telling. It was really, you could really see that determined in Clark's determination, his chutzpah, if you will. And a lot of this, too, it even rattled their peers, their Jewish American peers, like, hey, you might want to lay back on that. Don't make Clark so determined to do all this, or don't make Lois trying to expose corruption so much. This sounds a lot like people around here. Like, oh, this corrupt factory is exploiting its workers. Well, no, 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 that sounds like something that's going along locally. You better not write about that. They'll understand that allegory and comparison and get mad. But they just went ahead. But like I said, they did have to do kind of like the wartime patriotism thing. But at that time, everybody was doing it. They had to do it, and it kind of helped them though to stave off the thing of, oh, the socialist whiplash, if you will.
Mhm. That makes sense, and the Nazis actually spotted this, right?
The Nazi spot. Okay, there's the irony. Here's the irony that really slaps. That it's like, oh my, I didn't know that. So most of the American public, especially those who are not Jewish American, who weren't reading Superman, did not get that Superman was Jewish coded. A lot of them didn't. They're like, but a lot of Jewish Americans did, but many Americans didn't. However, many in Nazi Germany, especially those in the Nazi Party, picked up on it right away. They could tell just by the way Clark was designed, the way he acted, his actions, everything that happened, his interactions with Lois, the way Lois does things, and how he helps Lois. it screamed to them Jewish, and it made them mad. It rattled them right to the bone. And it even got so much that it incensed the propaganda minister, Joseph Goebbels, or however you would pronounce his name, just Joseph Jackass. um, but anyway, he got very mad, and he went on to actually write something where he's actually accusing Schuster and Siegel, but especially Siegel, because Siegel is more of the artistic front, um, of being, kind of like an underman, you know,
Untermensch.
Unterman, yes,
Yeah.
Unterman. And he's making these accusations, and that, hey, you Americans, do you know that this hero that you like so much is actually just a Jewish Untermensch? And Um, so what Siegel did what, and just in true chutzpah fashion, had made a comic where Superman beats the shit not only out of Hitler but also one for Goebbels.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome. And he actually says, and of course, and Superman does not say he's Jewish. He does not, because he's from Krypton, but Krypton's supposed to be an allegory, which we'll get into for something else. But he does say this. He says, to paraphrase, he says, I'm going to plant a non-Aryan fist on your face.
And his design is actually, a kind of a nod to that too. Like you said in the essay, I'm scrolling up to that part. His design, he is a dark-haired man. He is not like the blonde wasp that we currently and still associate. I mean, in the past we associated and we still currently associate with the whole all-American boy, right?
Exactly. So when you look at Clark Kent, when you look at Kal-El, when you look at Superman, you are looking at an allegory for not only someone who could be Jewish, but somebody who could be Southern Slav, Italian, Sicilian, Irish, Serbian, Greek.
Mhm.
All the things that made people scared of immigrants, like, oh, those dark
That's
haired,
true.
dark-eyed immigrants, how dare they come on our
Yeah.
shores, our blonde, blue-eyed infested shores. And it rubs in the face of the Aryan ideal, which is, blonde hair, blue-eyed, you know pink as a peach, um
Like
and
Captain America.
like Captain America, which is why I don't love Captain. I'm sorry, folks. I just don't love the Cap. I don't. I don't. Why'd you have to make him like that? Nobody answered. Nobody answered me. See, they have no answer. But, um, but yeah, Superman being dark hair and dark eyed, and also he had a bit of a skin tone too in earlier canon before I think he got considerably paled a bit. Um, is meant to embody that. And so it is nice to see this dark haired, dark eyed, you know, tanned man, punching the crap out of Nazis. Like
Mhm.
it's just the perfect PowerPoint. It's just the perfect punch, the perfect strike. And so yes, that was Siegel's response to you know Goebbels calling him an Untermensch and all that, and calling him on all other sorts of unsavory anti-Semitic things about Siegel
Mhm.
and Superman. An interesting thing too, Golden Age Superman. A lot of times, and most of it, Siegel actually based it on himself when he was younger.
Right, and I'm gonna share a picture of him. Just a second, I'm gonna find
Yeah,
it.
when he was young, he was a
Was
bay.
it Siegel or Schuster? I'm sorry, I
It
forgot.
was Siegel. Siegel.
Right.
When he
Gary
was
Siegel,
young,
right? Okay.
yeah, very young, very young.
Oh, I only saw the one with him with glasses. Is it that one?
No, I don't think that's it. Let me see if I can find it. Let me find it on my phone because my Chromebook is a bit. Let me find it here. I think we got the name wrong. Oh, darn it!
I
We
don't
hate
think
them.
Jerry looks like him. Is it the other dude?
Yeah, wait. Let me get
I
it.
think
I'm gonna.
Joe looks a little bit more like him. He's okay, so Jerry is the one with glasses.
Yeah, let me try to find. Oh, no, no, no. I'm sorry. My brain. It's the other one. I'm sorry. Just
Okay, let me
where am I
see.
here?
This is him, right?
It's Jerry. Jerry.
Jerry? Okay.
That's him.
This is Joe.
Wait, that's the wrong one. Wrong one. I'm sorry. Let me find it here because I actually had some pictures. Why was I not prepared for this? It's Jerry's eagle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it this picture of him?
Yeah, but when he was very young.
This one on the screen?
Yeah, that one. I mean, he was much younger,
Yeah.
but he did base himself a lot on that.
Yeah, the chin looks like Superman, doesn't it?
It does, and I love his curly hair.
I'm trying to find a better picture. Yeah, it's
Because they
mostly of
don't
him.
have any good
This one. How about this one?
Yes. So I think he's the one on
The left.
the left. Yeah.
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 And I guess
So
that's why Clark Kent has glasses, right? Because it seems like he wears glasses at least sometimes.
yes, yes, exactly. They both wore glasses, and um they both there was also an interesting thing around it too. Um they were both kind of shy um and around girls, and they were always wondering, what would happen if we were actually cool guys and these girls didn't know it. And then it turns out we were cool guys that could do things, and they would make jokes like, I'm going to try to impress this girl and tell her I can leap over a building, or you know what I mean, like outrageous things you say as a young man to impress a girl.
Mm-hmm.
And so they began to kind of manifest those concepts and sayings and stuff like that, and expressions into powers for Clark Kent. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was kind of a thing of making nervous young men who felt kind of shy around women more confident. And
That's interesting. Isn't that
yeah,
what Andre likes?
Andre loves to see shy young men get confident around women.
Mm-hmm.
Andre
But
needs to open
he does't like Sam. He still doesn't.
because Sam needs substance.
Sam's not shy at all.
No, I mean, maybe he. I think, here's the thing. Quick deviation. Andre is mad at Sam because Sam is detracting Joel. If Sam did not detract Joel, he wouldn't be as mad.
That's true. Yeah.
That's why Andre's mad. But yes, getting back to that. So yeah, speaking of models, another little tidbit just to throw out there. Um, Siegel also based, how do I say, the design and personality of Lois. He actually based it off of a young woman that he needed to model for her character. Because back then, the reason why I say a lot of things looked better back then was that people were actually using real life models to help them get references.
Oh, that's interesting. So that's where the face claim idea comes from, right?
Yes, where the face claim, but also to how people moved, how people act and move their mouth and stuff like that. Because people didn't have like rotoscope. People didn't, well, not back then, but
3D
uh,
models.
3D models or Pinterest. It's not like, oh, model on Pinterest. So um, so they hired this young woman, and she came into their studio, which was just kind of a glorified living room at that point, and her name was Joanne Siegel. No relation, but it gets interesting. But anyway, um, he loved her personality, the way she looked, the way she acted, and it just created that golden age look for Lois, and really brought
Mm.
about her personality. And it's kind of cute because she also remembers when she first met them. She came up to their apartment. It's in their living room. She hears a bunch of crashing going on, and it's actually Siegel trying to get a pose done right in the mirror. Um, and he's actually trying to do like a flying or leaping motion. So he's just falling
Oh,
off.
wow.
He's just leaping off the sofa all the time. And but anyway, she Joanne pretty much became the model and the kind of personality formation of Lois, and that influenced why Lois is Lois in Golden Age
Mhm.
canon, and probably for different radiations why Lois is Lois, and certain things about her. Um, but they did develop a very very strong friendship. And then afterwards, like I would say after the DC debacle and a few years, I would say several or more years later, they actually met again. Both of them had been divorced and just kind of jaded about things, but they resumed their friendship and they got married, and I think they were married for at least, I think, over 40 plus years.
Wow. So I guess it is very autobiographical.
It is, and they got along very well. So a lot of the kind of banter, I don't want to say banter, but this kind of exchange and sassy throwing back and forth, and the way they connected and acted, that kind of influence too what you see with Golden Age, Lois and Clark. And I think that's why it feels so natural and sweet.
Mhm, it does. And you were saying that it reminded you of Joel and Malka.
It does. Well, I will say, it does remind me a bit of Joel and Malka. I will say though, maybe um more of the angst and silent nonverbal communication. It feels more like Snyderverse, and we're probably going to get into
Oh
Snyderverse in
yeah.
the next couple minutes or so.
Mhm, we will. So
Yeah.
yeah, what is the next part? Okay, we conflicts with Golden Age canon and DCEU cinema.
Right, right. So and we already did touch the Mosaic Parallels. I think we covered that in a previous podcast, didn't we, about the Krypton and things, or
Yes, we did. Yes. So
okay.
to cover it very shortly, Krypton is kind of like the old world, right? And
Yeah.
it is imploding because of the social revolutions and the anti-Semitism, which is, what we saw in Eastern Europe, and that drove a lot of them to immigrate to the USA. And as basically, an analogy for that, we have Superman fleeing his planet and then he arrives on Earth.
Exactly, and it's done in perfect mosaic style. His parents see the destruction. They send him in a small spacecraft vessel, through space under Earth. So you can interpret that as Moses in the reed basket down the Nile. And like Moses, he's found by the foreigners and adopted and assimilated into their culture and language, just as Moses was adopted and assimilated into Egyptian culture. We have Clark Kent slash Kal-El into, Midwestern American. Both of these men grow into their youth, into manhood. They keep their real ethnic identity secret, or keep it hidden, or in Clark's case, they don't know about it until they reach a more pivotal age. And depending on the version of it, either he finds out about it or he doesn't. He just has the powers. He doesn't know what to do with it, but he decides to use it for good. Or there's the more complicated lore where he does find out about it, and that kind of presses him further to do good, because he doesn't want to see this planet end up like the planet that he never got to know.
That's true. And that's where his compassion for Earth comes from.
Exactly, exactly. He's grown to love it. He loves it. It's the only home he knows, and he doesn't want it to end up like the place he's from that he never got to know, that got destroyed, which its destruction could have been prevented, but people didn't care. So that's why he does care, and that's why he does love.
Oh, that makes sense. And that's why he's hope punk.
Exactly. That's why he's Hope Punk.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And for, the DCEU cinema, what makes it different from Golden Age? Is he much darker?
Well, so basically there's big conflicts with Golden Age and DC extended universe cinema. Um, I personally like both. I think both are very. I mean, I love Golden Age very much, and I love the DC extended universe cinema. I think it's done very nicely. I'm probably one of the few people that like it. I do. But so the DC extended universe cinema has drawn its fair share of criticism for darkening Clark's character and aspect, especially with other mishaps that have happened, which everybody probably knows about. Um, so basically, it has darkened quite a bit of Clark's character, but it's not dark as in it's making him evil or malicious. it's made the world around him a lot darker, and then therefore it makes it all the more difficult for him to to carry that torch, to carry that light. Um, and if anything, I think it's just a reflection on our modern time and the way our world has expanded. It's become more of a panicking dystopia that nothing can be readily resolved. It's not as neatly compact, or with the thing of, I mean, there is still the need for social justice, but it cannot be easily and readily resolved as people previously thought it could be.
That makes a lot of sense. It's more morally gray, and it's harder for people, even Superman, to be so full of hope.
It is, and I believe that director Zack Snyder's done a wonderful job of showing the struggle of hope and the doubt and a lot of the sadness at the futility of trying to do that. And a lot of people didn't like this. Well, for example, I'm just going through my thing here, my essay. I'm just going through this real quick. So, like for example, you also have to remember too, the way it explores this too. How would we as a modern society react to an individual who is an alien from another planet? Would we
Hmm.
welcome him with open arms, or would we simply have the government, hey, take him away, keep him safe under lock and key, see what you can get out of him? I don't know. You can experiment on him. I guess it's not a human right violation, is it? So this is something a lot of people didn't really think when they criticize, say, Man of Steel, 2013's film Man of Steel, when his father especially doesn't want him showing his powers, his adoptive father, Jonathan Kent. Um, because there's one incident where, Clark's taking the bus to school, something happens with the bus, and suddenly the bus is getting submerged in this lake, and Clark's only like 10, 13 at the time. And he lifts the bus out of the water, and his father scolds him about that, because what happens if people found out? The government would probably take him away, and then people would find out the truth, that he's not of this world. And you have to, it does make you think, what are the consequences of that today? How would we react? Would we welcome such an individual, or would we seek to not trust this individual and contain them, or maybe exploit their powers as part of a military industrial complex thing? And that explored it very well. And there's also always this um, paranoia that Clark had to experience throughout most of his life until he felt confident enough to come onto his own with his powers and such. Um, but a lot of people criticize that. They say, well, Jonathan and Martha would always teach him to use his powers for good. But that's the thing: is the world going to accept him, or will they exploit it? And
Hmm.
for example, I sort of, how do I say? Well, for example, we kind of see this detriment of what happens when you try to take on that role. So we kind of see this in Batman versus Superman: Dawn of Justice. This is
Hmm.
further explored with the world's dependence proving detrimental to Clark, to his well being, and the command of his responsibilities and powers. And this has become a detriment to him, because he's tried very hard to live up, to ideals that he's gotten from his parents, but that he's also learned, um through records of his Kryptonian parents, Jor-El and Lara. Um, so it becomes more and more impossible for him to keep up with that. And then on top of that, he's got the friction of Bruce Wayne's extremist views, while understandable from a wholly human jaded side, only further drive this detriment to tragic results. And unfortunately, the only tethering line that Clark has for human connection or any kind of happiness, really, because of a world rejecting him, lie in Lois and his surviving mother, Martha, which is, you know, um, why he makes it such a low blow that um Lex Luthor has Clark's mother abducted, and with the threat of doing awful things to her. Like, that's so low. Like, you can't even get lower than that.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
um but yeah, and then I guess the other further clashes with DC extended universes. People were saying that it took away from it because it did not have the Jewish coding of Golden Age. It felt more like Christian allegory, with different imagery, and then with the resurrection theme in Justice League. But you know what? It's not really, when you think about it, because when you look at it, um, there are themes of self sacrifices, such as in John and Justice, that's more universal. And the resurrection itself is seen as more of a separate thing. It's more of a need based thing. It's not something that has to happen. It's just a need base that had happened.
Mhm.
And so, like I said here, while the concept of self sacrifice is not Christian, again, it is universal and bears more in the context of Clark's character a Judaic tone, neither is resurrection. Combining these two evoke a nod to a more Christian idea than opposed to these concepts separately presented. Still, even combined, these themes are not claimed by Christianity solely, but owe its ideation to Judaic religious thought. And even too, the way it's all built up and the way it's formed too, like in the dialogue in the Snyder cut of Justice League, Clark opens up to Lois about his time and death, and his description, though brief, evokes more of the Hebraic concept of Sheol, a dark place of stillness after death. And then, of course, we go on here. The resurrection process is entirely science based. Science fiction, we should clarify, originates more from transhumanism than anything else, or more accurately, the idea formed in the Russian school of transhumanism, Cosmism, which emphasized a technological based approach of resurrection, which one could argue is, orthodox, but then again, all these ideations owe themselves to Judaic thought.
Mhm. It is, exactly, and, it takes a closer look to recognize this because the mass public is not familiar with that, and they assume this is from Christianity.
Exactly, exactly. And also, one person I read of, as part of the reading list, um, one person who had seen Man of Steel, a writer who is of Jewish ethnic identity and practice, they said that when they watched it, they didn't feel it was Christian. They felt it was very Jewish, including the paranoia and fear of being discovered. That
Mhm.
it felt like it was a coding or an allegory for hiding one's Jewish identity. Because here's what somebody once said: would a Christian feel like they've had to hide who they really are? You know,
Well, some Christians think they are being persecuted by the United States government, the very, very paranoid ones, the quote unquote fundamentalist branches who think that everyone is a Marxist and we nice Christians are just getting persecuted, the homeschool types.
I do not need to go on to that. That is BS beyond compare. But
Dinosaurs are created to, tempt us off the path of Christ. You remember those
they're
people?
off their kilter. They're not off the path of Christ. They're off their kilter, is what it is. But, um, but yes, but also, like this writer was also saying, it's one of the articles that people can read on the essay. The
Mhm.
paranoia does feel like an allegory for hiding one's Jewish identity and the fear of being discovered and the retribution and consequences of that. Um, but also the struggle of fitting in and the alienation, of a society that's very unwelcoming. And while it is a bit heavy-handed, and while it is on a bigger global scale, and sometimes you do lose the concept of the tikkun olam, of the more socialist, more down to earth things of original golden canon. I think the DC cinematic universe, the Snyderverse, has done a very good job, I think, in preserving that for a modern time. And yes, maybe we did lose the warmth and the cheer and the sass of Golden Age, and we lost the smaller, more intimate touch of Clark beating up, corrupt politicians, or beating up, sleazebag, exploiting, capitalist corporates and or mafia bosses. We lost
Mhm.
that, but we no longer really. Those are not really the big villains. I think the big thing is the despair of globalism and the despair of not being able to stop everything, and that there's consequences with power. So those are the real struggles. And I think it's done a very good job of translating that. And I think it's been beautifully done. Yes, we had to lose a lot of things, but then again, it's a different time, and we are a different people.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. I think nowadays people mostly focus on isolation.
Exactly,
Definitely. Yeah, and
exactly.
not having a defined goal. I think in the past it mattered less if you had a goal because more people were able to find, you know, a niche in life. But now you're just basically on your own in so many respects.
You are. It's harder to find a niche. It's harder to find people that understand you and vibe with you and are willing to support you even. And I think that's the one of the driving themes of the way Superman is presented in the Snyderverse. And that's why it's so vital that, it's vital for him to make a few new friends, which is why it was good to have people who are more understanding. Like, I do appreciate Diana's understanding in Justice League, because Batman just messed it up beyond belief in the previous installment.
Mhm.
But also too, that Clark, does have Lois, and thank goodness his mom's still alive. I was like, thank goodness Martha's alive.
Mhm.
you know.
Mhm. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
not going to go into too much detail about this because I think, I think people should read it on your blog, but we'll talk a little bit about the Near Eastern, Sumerian, and Hebraic comparisons across canons, especially about his powers. So, one of the ones that really stuck out to me was his strength, which was a lot like Samson from the Old Testament.
Yes, exactly, exactly. I mean, for example, but how does this tie in with Near Eastern Judaic texts? The comparison. Simple. In Golden Age canon, Clark's powers are more humanly realized and thus limited. His feats come at a cost. He evokes the awesome strength of the Judaic Samson and the godlike feats of strength enacted by the Sumerian legends of Gilgamesh and Enkidu, respectively. But like these men, Clark's strength does have its limitation, even more so than the figures in Judaic and Sumerian literature and myth. For example, the feats that resonate very deeply with Superman's feats, one could compare it to Samson taking down 300 Philistine,
Mhm.
or say when Samson had to lift that door and carry it so many miles, a big city door. Like, you can't imagine how, like, we know how big those city doors were back in the ancient days, so he's carrying that like it's nothing for miles. And does that not taking down so many people at the same time, or carrying a huge thing like that, does that not evoke like the very things that Superman does?
Exactly, it does. Yes. And, we also talk about the S on his outfit, which is actually not just, S for Superman, but it's also the S symbol the S symbol looks like the Hebrew letter, the Lamed.
Yes, Lamed. So this was interesting. I did not really know this until I started doing more research, because I had always wondered about that. But people said this is what it is, and I looked at the letter and I'm like, that's what it looks like. So it's not just S for Superman. It has a deeper meaning. So basically, to kind of reiterate, by itself, the Lamed is the rough approximation of the Grecian lambada, or the Cyrillic L. When combined with the letter Va, Lamed takes on a new meaning. According to Talmudic texts, this combination creates the term and concept Lamed Vad Z- Zadikam. You probably pronounce it better than me. Um, the 36 individuals chosen to sustain the world. These Lamad Viniks, the Yiddish term, are people of exemplary humility who, to quote Rabbi Emelech Sphira of Dinov, in every generation there are great righteous people who could perform wondrous acts. But the generation is not deserving of that, so the stature of the righteous people is hidden away, and they are not known to the public. Sometimes they are wood choppers or water drawers. So they have very unassuming, unlikely professions. So why not a mild mannered reporter? So, like Clark. So, further exclamation of the Lamada Venex, the Lamad Venex Sedacum, also known as the Mysterium, concealed ones. So, in folk tales, they emerge out of their self imposed concealment, and by mystic powers which they possess, they succeed in averting the threatened disasters of a people persecuted by the enemies that surround them. They return to their anonymity as soon as their task is accomplished, concealing themselves once again in a Jewish community where they are relatively unknown. The Lamadvaniks, scattered as they are throughout the diaspora, have no acquaintance with each other on very rare occasions. But so far, so basically, when you look at that concept of they're anonymous, and then they're not anonymous when they go and do the task, but then as soon as the task is done, rush back to being anonymous. That's just the very concept of Clark going in and out as Superman.
Exactly. This is a great summary of it. And, you guys, if you want to read more about it, please check out Tete's blog post, and the link is in the description.
Yes, absolutely. Please check out the essay if you want to contribute to it. If you guys have more information or any opinions you'd like to share, or any kind of thing you'd like to contribute, or just comment on it, or questions, go ahead, comment on the blog. I will be checking it out. You can also DM me on Instagram, and I will gladly answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tete. I love all this work you've been doing on Superman. And, this is really enlightening to me. I never thought about him from such a perspective. And, it's interesting to compare him also more with your character, Andre, which we're going to do in future episodes.
Yes, yes, we will. They have a lot in common.
They do.
They do. They actually kind of look a little bit alike too. A little bit.
Yeah, like in The
Well,
Sims.
like in this, they were twins almost. Um,
Yes. So we will talk more about Andre and Clark, and also, of course, Andre and Joel in more detail
of
again.
course, absolutely.
Because Clark, Andre, and Joel are your top three men right now.
They are. It's going to be my permanent holy trinity of men, male characters.
Right. No more Kai. He's gone.
He's gone. Oh,
All right. Thank you so much, Tete.
thank you. It was an honor. I enjoyed doing this. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're
Bye.
welcome. Bye.